The last thing that we want to do is put the customer into a loan today, and 2 days down the road, they've been laid off and they didn't know it was coming, and now they have a $500 or $700 payment that they have to make.
The Dealer Deep Dive Podcast.
Okay, so we are recording. We're live. Thanks for watching the video. Andrew Lemoine here from Car Loans Canada, and I've got Paul Barnes, Vice President of Eden Park, on the line. Paul, what's going on, man?
Not much. Just working from home, the new reality. Stuck in my office here with the door locked, with two crazy kids in the background making lots of noise. So that's kind of the reality these days, hey?
It is, man. I feel you there. It's very similar setup that what we got going on here. I was just on Twitter and I posted on LinkedIn. This guy created a homemade light box up in his kitchen where it shows dad's on a call, headphones are on for his family upstairs. I'm like, I need one of these.
Yeah, absolutely. I need to get one of those as well. Good idea.
Yeah. I thought it was really, really cool. Anyways, look, I really appreciate your time, Paul, and I'm excited to connect with you. What I wanted to do was just, I want to have a conversation about what you're seeing out there in the industry right now from a lender's perspective. We've been doing a lot of meetings with dealers, but I'm really curious to connect with some of the lenders and just get your perspective. And for people that are watching that aren't familiar with Paul, he's certainly a veteran up here in the Canadian auto finance space. Paul, started off with VFC. He's worked for TD Auto Finance. He's worked for Carfinco. And, as of recent, he's taken on the role of Vice President of Eden Park. So, you certainly have a wealth of knowledge and, historical knowledge and experience, but I'm sure we're all experiencing, you've never been through or seen anything like this.
No. Thanks for the intro, Andrew. But you're right. 2008 was kind of a different beast than what we see today, right? A lot of people were talking about some economic changes and downturn that we were going to see anyways, but everything's really been accelerated and really just stopped with everything that's been happening, with COVID-19. And first, I definitely want to address the fact that we're talking about something that's very sensitive, and I know that it affects everybody in so many different ways, right? So, I'm fortunate to not have anybody in my life that's kind of experienced any trouble with it, but I know that there's probably people that are going to be listening, and in no way our conversation here is to downplay kind of what's happening with COVID. It's very scary and very we have to take it very seriously, but there are some businesses that are still open, and we want to try and help them navigate as best they can through this time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. But definitely unique.
And I was saying, it's very unique. And so you were in the finance space, you lived and worked right through the kind of 2009 crash, right? So you saw the ripple effect of that. But again, I think that what we're about to experience here, even from a lender perspective, is going to be far greater. I think the impact of COVID-19 is going to be far greater than what we felt up here in Canada anyways, with the 2009 kind of Lehman collapse.
Yeah, for sure. And right now, and just to, give you the lender perspective as to what we're seeing these days, it's so hard to predict with customers, and it's so hard to predict what's happening in the market, because each day there's rolling layoffs, and another industry or another company is having layoffs. So, we've seen it, and I'm sure other lenders have seen this as well, where we would verify an income on a Friday and fund a deal on a Friday, make a customer call on the Monday or Tuesday of the following week, and they've already been laid off, right? It's just so unpredictable. So, each lender is trying to do what they can to make sure that they're, number one, protecting themselves, but then also two, protecting the customers, right? The last thing that we want to do is put the customer into a loan today, and 2 days down the road, they've been laid off and they didn't know it was coming, and now they have a $500 or $700 payment that they have to make each month, right? So we want to be really careful as to what we're looking at as well, and I think every lender's kind of adopted the same mentality.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And from a from a dealer perspective, for the dealers that are listening right now, Paul, what do they need to be aware of and look out for? Because you just mentioned that scenario. And obviously that scenario, unfortunately, is going to continue to happen right now. The layoff and EI numbers just keep climbing every single day. So, I think that obviously lenders are being far more thorough. Dealers are being far more thorough. What kind of precautions from a lender's perspective are you taking, and what do dealers need to be careful of and watch out for? Because the last thing I want to see happen is dealers, delivering cars that are burning gas and then find out that they can't get funded for it. So how can dealers protect themselves right now to just limit,
Yeah. So I think the dealers really need, so this is going to be a really useful video, right? So I think the dealers need to know kind of where the mindset of the lender is, right? So the mindset of the lender is that things are changing every day. So today I'm going to tell you that my intention is to do X, Y, Z. And 3 days from now, the market could totally change in that area. So we have to kind of adjust as we go. So it's a really unpredictable time on our side, but also at the dealer side. So for sure, they should be being in constant communication with their customers. I think there's, in some dealerships, definitely not a blanket statement here, there is let's talk to the customer about what they need to know, and let's keep the back and forth as minimal as possible so that we don't affect the buying process here. We don't want it to drag out. We don't want to scare the customer. We don't want to do anything like that. So, but I think at this time, we really just need to be open and have a true open dialogue with our customers so that we understand what their reality is these days. I know the hope is we sell and finance a car, but we also want to make sure that we know exactly what's going on for the customer. So definitely keep the lines of communication open with the customer at all times.
Yeah.
Number two, I think it's keep your lines of communication open with your banks at all times as well. So if you have something chalked up with a certain bank, definitely be in contact with them. Make sure you're reaching out to them. We're all not as busy as we were in prior days. So line up your day with calling out to your customers, calling out to your banks, finding out exactly where their mindset is and just being prepared as a finance manager. And then the next step would be to make sure that you're holding on to your assets as long as possible. I know that the idea is to get the customer in the car and get them down the road, get it burning gas as soon as possible. And in a normal environment, that happens often, and it's usually okay. In this scenario, I would definitely recommend waiting until you see that the deal is booked in DealerTrack. Once it's booked, through your portal of choice. But once it's booked, at that point, you can then release your vehicle. Just slowing down the process a tiny bit just to make sure that everything's okay. Because the last thing that you want is for your lender to be reviewing and saying, hey, you know what, maybe this isn't a customer that we should be doing. We just found out that they lost their job. I don't want to be lending $20,000 or $30,000 to somebody who's now temporarily laid off, and we don't know how long it's going to be. So definitely put that extra, checks and bounds in place. Talk to your customers as much as you can. Talk to your lenders as much as you can. Follow through the process. And then at the end, hold on to your asset until you see that the deal's booked.
Makes so much sense. And I mean, it's fair to say that this has probably already happened a couple times, right? Where dealerships are delivering cars and then, lenders are getting new information. And that's why I think that there's just such a critical 24 to 48 hour delivery period right now where the dealers have to be very, very careful, like you said, on how they're doing it. So you recommend, obviously waiting until the deal's booked,
100%.
before delivering that car.
Absolutely, Andrew. And this isn't an Eden Park issue.
Right.
As you know, we have contacts all throughout the industry, and I've been talking to my contacts, and we're all having these difficult conversations with dealers saying, hey, you know what, we hadn't funded your deal yet, and we just got notice that the customer's not working anymore. So the dealers are having to pull back cars left and right, and it's putting everybody in a real tough position. So I think that if we just slow down a little bit and really be aware of what's happening around us, I think it'll put us all in a better position. We're not going to be able to sell. The reality is we're not going to be able to sell as many cars today as we could a month ago. So we just need to kind of adapt to our new reality.
100%. And, and not only, and that's what I've kind of been saying is, it's okay to just realize that right now it's tougher. And, you're not going to be able to sell as many cars as, as you were a couple months ago. And the ones that you do sell, are going to be much harder. Like, you're going to have to put so much more effort and work into delivering 10 cars, today than you had to, 40 cars 2 months ago. What I've been saying to a lot of dealers that aren't closed down, and we'll get into that in a moment, is just that my whole point is that it's not over. You don't have to go to some zero right now. We're all down though. But in terms of your business curve, you don't have to do this. You could do this right now. We're going down, but you don't have to do that, right? And but we're hearing a lot of things where lenders are also taking, everyone's nervous, everyone's on edge, and everyone's taking some extra precautions. So Paul, could you maybe shed some light on like what steps are lenders taking, like in terms of, I'm sure that there's enhanced verification, maybe multiple verification steps right now, which would totally make sense. From a lender's standpoint, customer contact, anything like that you're seeing that the lenders are starting to do right now, a lot more of?
Yeah. So two things. So first thing, what we're doing, what lenders are most likely doing, and I won't be company specific on this one, but definitely enhanced job verification calls. So most lenders in the past had processes where maybe they could waive verbals if it was a really strong pay stub that came through. Maybe they were waiving income in general, or maybe they were waiving verbals to the companies that the customers are working for. Those days are kind of gone right now. Everybody wants to be conducting verbals on pretty much everything, right? We want to be calling calling the employers to make sure that this is something that the customer is going to be able to stay in. We're really looking out for those essential services as well, right? So that we get those lists from the provinces of essential services, and those are all big things and important for us as lenders these days, right? So verbals are being conducted usually once when we get the pay stub, but then also probably another time throughout the funding process. So know that you're getting multiple verbal verifications of income on your deals. As well, there's a lot of times where we're going to be calling the customer. Prior to this, maybe a welcome call to the customer might have been something that they would get, but now it's industry standard that they want to talk to the lenders, want to talk to the customers before they book the deal, just to ensure that everything's still as presented, right? So there's additional things that are happening on the lender side that are going to create new hurdles, I guess, for dealers. It's a different process. It's not the smooth process that you would have expected a month ago, 2 months ago. Now we have a little bit of a bumpy process, but we have to do it, right? We're going through unprecedented times. So, all lenders are implementing new rules to make sure that, number one, we're protected, and then also the customers. But Andrew, just to touch on a point that you were talking about, the dealerships, we see dealers these days really adopting a little bit of a delivery to the customer type mentality or process. The dealers that are still operating and are really being successful are the ones that are taking the applications over the internet. They're talking to the customers, doing web calls like this, showing the customers via FaceTime, or whatever it is, what's happening in the showroom. And then from there, having it delivered to the customer, even doing test drives, bringing a couple cars out to the customer and letting them test drive a couple of the different models, right? So, those are things that are happening. And we've talked about that at the different conferences over the years, that, how things are going to change at the dealership level, the bricks and mortar dealership. And hey, you know what? This is kind of a crash course on what to be doing. We find that that's kind of the adaptation that these dealers are taking, that they're really trying to find a way to do things remotely.
Yeah, I believe that consumer behavior is going to be forever changed, and expectations. Like, I know some people want to believe that the industry is just going to one day go back to the way it was, and obviously the dealers are going to reopen and business is going to come back. But I think that consumer expectations are going to be forever changed due to COVID-19, because we're, as a world now, getting used to, curbside pickups and full virtual, purchasing and true digital retailing, right? It was a term that we've loosely in the industry thrown around now for so many years, but let's just call it what it is. There was not a lot of real true digital retailing going on, where now there is, right? Dealers have kind of had to, they've had to adapt and catch up overnight. And, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, Paul, from your perspective and what you're seeing in terms of the dealers right now, because I'll tell you, from our standpoint at Car Loans Canada, it's a little bit of a mix right now that what we're seeing out there in the industry. Like, we're certainly experiencing some dealerships that have closed. Many dealerships have closed down or are running on total skeleton crews. There's certain parts of Canada that we're seeing aren't nearly as active, but then there's other parts where they're super active. And then kind of a thing that we weren't expecting, we're certainly not complaining, is, from a lead standpoint and a business standpoint as Car Loans Canada, there's areas where we're seeing an increase. Like we're actually experiencing dealers that are looking for an increase in the finance leads and applications that they're getting from us, because they're looking to supplement all that loss in walk-in traffic that they were usually used to getting. So it's been really interesting for us, because one day it's like it's all shutting down, and the next day it's like, oh wait a minute, the orders are actually getting bigger. But then there's pockets where we're seeing, okay, dealers in this area, this city seem to be, closing, but here kind of they're doing more business. So what, from a lender's perspective, what are you guys seeing from from deals being sent in and kind of a take on the general market right now?
Yeah, so the general market, different pockets are seeing different things. One of the things that are creating a little bit of stress is across the country is like licensing offices.
Yep.
So where somebody would go in and get like a registration processed, we're seeing that in some provinces these offices are being completely shut down, right? So that's really hurting the process out that way. But we are also seeing that dealerships are taking the necessary steps to say, hey, you know what, I don't want to put. But like some of them are saying they don't want to put their employees in a certain position, and they don't want to put their customers in a certain position. So they're really trying to adapt to this new like remote, if they're staying open, this new remote buying process, right? So the ones that are staying open are looking at some kind of lead generation, a supplement to the people that were walking in the door, 2 weeks ago or a month ago, right? So that's changed. So if they're going to still continue to try and sell some vehicles, that might be something that they're looking into. And there is a lot of talk about that. So I would suspect that, on the lead generation side, that you guys would be definitely seeing some inquiries and definitely getting some questions asked, right? So
and we're also seeing too, and you see it too, because from the standpoint of a lender, you're very familiar with a lot of the dealers out there that operate and run on kind of the lead gen model, right? And what we've experienced, because we work with all types of different dealers, right? And certainly I can tell you like with absolute certainty that our dealer partners that kind of were 100% focused on the finance lead model, and that's what they built the whole business around, they have been far less impacted and affected than our other dealers partners who were like, this was just a small portion of their business, but then obviously they were relying so much heavily on the traditional model and the walk-in traffic. It seems that the lead dealers are far less impacted, and those are the dealers that we're seeing that are actually looking for more traffic right now, because what's happening in a lot of areas is so many dealers are shutting down, so it's actually opening the market up a little bit, in certain regards. But it's interesting because we've been tooting that horn now for years, trying to tell all dealers that, hey, pay attention to this model, whether you buy leads from us or not, whether you just generate your own finance applications or not. It's not to say that every dealer should be buying leads from Car Loans Canada. That's not what I'm saying. I've been saying for years, but I think they should be, by the way. But what I've been saying for years is just that, guys, you should be paying attention to this model because it works. And there's something to be said here. And then, when COVID happened, all of a sudden now, a lot of dealers kind of waking up like, okay, what does this look like? How can we start selling online digitally? And what's the whole lead model look like? So, and I know that you're probably seeing that too, that a lot of, a lot of the traditional stores, the lenders were seeing doing a lot of submissions, especially on the non-prime side. Those are the stores that you probably, and I'm assuming, so please confirm, but lenders are probably not seeing a total drop off in submissions because they are still open.
Yeah, the hard part is, and you're right. Like two things on this too. Number one, I firmly believe, and we've had this conversation many times before, that we need to diversify as businesses, right? If we have all of our eggs in one basket,
Yeah.
chances are we're going to be successful to an extent. But then something like this happens, and then you really don't have any kind of contingency plan or alternative plan. So it's nice to have different lines of where you're getting your customers from. So I think it's really important to always keep those ideas flowing and those ideas open to, do I want to get customers from radio advertising? Do I want to do newspaper advertising? I know I'm dating myself here. Newspaper.
You're actually not, Paul. You'd be surprised in the print business that still goes on. So
okay. But then am I going to look into lead generation? Is that an option? Am I going to work with local banks or trustees? Like where am I going to get my customers? So I think the more diversified you are, the better you are off. We are still seeing a lot of applications coming through, and lenders are seeing a lot of applications come through. The scary part is, we know that there's a bunch of layoffs that are happening here. So we just have to be very diligent with the applications that we are getting in the door. So yes, the lead generation dealers are still submitting a bunch of applications. So they do have customers that are inquiring about car loans. We just, on our end, again, need to be really diligent, making sure that they're still employed, that they will be employed through this process, and that at the end of the process, when we actually book the deal, they're still able to make their payment on their vehicle. So yeah, we are still getting tons of applications that way, and all lenders are. So again, it's just due diligence, right? We got to make sure we're covered.
100%. So talk to us a little bit about like e-contracting and what that looks like right now from a lender's perspective. That's something that most of the lenders are totally accepting right now.
Yeah. So I can't comment for all the lenders here, but I know that this has been a conversation for years, right? In the mortgage business, it happens every day. And in the auto business, we've been very reluctant to adopt it. And I really think, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong on this one, but I really think that the hesitation was that, we really don't know what this will look like in court. We don't have an original signature on a contract. And we don't know, there's no precedent that's been set with this on how it will look if we need to go and seize a vehicle or sue in a situation, right? So I think lenders have been slow to adopt it. All of our legal teams are looking at these things, of course. But in this case, what's happening right now, people are speeding up the process, right? So people are starting to accept these things now. So we're seeing that this is becoming acceptable. And it's definitely something that we're moving on now. So it's becoming more and more acceptable because we kind of have to make it be at this point. But also what's happening in, say, Ontario. So with OMVIC regulations, a lot of dealerships will OMVIC license their drivers. So their driver will drive to the customer's house, deliver the car. They're OMVIC certified, so they can stand with the customer while the customer signs off on the documents, and they can check their identification again, take a picture of it, whatever they have to do, get in their car and go home or go back to the dealership. So that's kind of one of the processes that are happening with delivery and remote deliveries, or curbside, as you called it. So yeah, that's just another process. But yeah, it's definitely changing, right? The way that we do business is changing every day.
Yeah, that's why I posted. I said the word curbside used to be a dirty word in our business. We're gonna have to change a couple things up.
That's it. Right? Yeah, for sure.
Curbsiders weren't good. Yeah. So, okay. So what about, we'll wrap this up soon. What about like deferrals? Because we're hearing a lot of talk about deferrals, and there's obviously there's no better time for that now. I also know in terms of the non-prime and near prime lending, that's certainly not an option like it is with a prime applicant. So, again, from a dealer's perspective, what are some options, Paul? If you could just give some advice to some of the dealers that are listening, like what are some good tactics and advice that the dealers can be passing on right now to the consumers, and the best way on approaching that. But I've been seeing a lot of talk about 3 to 6 month deferrals. It seems that a lot of the captives are certainly doing that, but let's talk about such a large portion of the market, and the market that so many of the lenders serve, which is the non-prime, near prime. That's not really an option, is it?
So loaded question. So I think that on our side, on the non-prime side, all lenders are definitely empathetic to what's happening here, right? For us, we know that this has never happened, that there's people that are losing their jobs each day. Of course, we want to be in a position where we're working with the people that that are in a true tough situation, maybe not somebody who's taking advantage of a situation. And I'm not saying that happens often, but I'm sure it does happen from time to time.
Sure.
But all non-prime lenders want to be working with their customers these days, right? We didn't have a blast out on CTV or CBC or something saying that, hey, we're advertising that we're doing 6-month deferrals and we're doing this and we're doing that. None of us did on the non-prime side, but I know, and again, the non-prime lenders out there that are listening to this can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that we all want to work with our customers as best we can, right? So what I would recommend to dealers is having their customers contact us. Be upfront with everything, right? Contact us, explain your situation. If you can make your payments, right? If it's tough to make your full payment, maybe make a half payment, right? Come up with different ideas, and the lender will give you different ideas on what you can do. But the thing is, we don't want to be in a situation, and it's funny, they just announced all the regulations yesterday. Sorry to deviate here. They just announced all the regulations yesterday with the 75% wage subsidy or payroll subsidy for businesses.
Yep.
And they were sitting there talking about any businesses that take advantage of this. These are the consequences, right? So,
it's almost sounding like, which by the way, it should be, but it's like it's going to be criminal almost, which I agree with, because now is not a time to be trying to be. Well, never is a time, but like now more than ever, don't try to get cute. Do not try to, take advantage of the government right now when they're, in my opinion, is seriously stepping up to the plate to try to help save this economy and small businesses. So, you're right.
Agreed. Yeah. Sorry. And just to bring that back into the non-prime and deferrals and things like that, it is something that we want to be doing, and we want to be offering good clients that are really having trouble at this point. We want to be working with them. So all the non-prime lenders are trying their best to do that. Now, I can speak on my company's behalf on what we saw. So our need because of these advertisements, in the print media and on the internet, with regard to some of the big banks getting into this, we've been bombarded with calls and requests for these things, and so at the beginning, a lot of us weren't really prepared for this, right? Like we didn't have enough customer service agents, we didn't have enough collections agents sitting there ready to take these calls. So through this wave, we've all been panicking, trying to get enough staff in there to be able to take the calls and work closely with our customers. So we've been really trying to make it a quick turnaround on our side. So I think moving forward, you're going to see a lot more of a steady offering to customers. So as a dealer, definitely be recommending that your customer call in. If they called in last week and they were, they maybe didn't necessarily get the answer that they wanted, have them call back in, talk to a manager. There's always somebody here who wants to be able to help with the customer situation, because again, we're going through it too as members of society, right? Like, luckily, knock on wood, I'm still gainfully employed, but that could change in 2 weeks. Who knows, right? So
sure.
I'm not in a position right now where I'm going to call my bank and ask to defer my payments on my mortgage, because I'm still working, right? And I'm still making my money. And sure, it would be nice to be able to put that money in my bank, but there are some fees that are involved, and there's also interest that's charged as well, right? So customers just need to be aware that it's not a traditional thing for a bank to say, okay, let's defer a payment, right? Like, it's not a traditional thing. So sometimes there are fees that are involved, and they're usually minimal fees. And a lot of the non-prime banks are seeing what they can do, try to work with the customers to try and waive those. But there's probably interest that's generated on that payment that's being deferred as well, right? So They just need to be understanding of what the bank is doing and how unnatural it is for them to continue to do a ton of those things. So,
Sure. And like you said, you guys just got bombarded, like the lenders too, right? So dealers listing, like, also put yourself in your lender's shoes. Like Paul was just saying, like they just got lit up as soon as the consumers see on, like you said, CTV that GM, or Ford are doing these deferral payments. All of a sudden, all the banks' phones just start to ring, right? And you've got so much, and quite frankly, you guys weren't prepared for it. And I think that right now more than ever is when the dealers and the lenders, you guys really need to work so closely together right now, to continue to support that consumer, right? And because understand is that customer, like we'll use your bank for an example, Paul. That is a customer of Eden Park and a customer of the dealership. And this is where I've been telling dealers a lot to like be proactive with reaching out to their database and their member, their customers, for support for the financial side of things, because you got to know that your customers have questions, and why not be that concierge? Why don't let your customer get lost into the deep dark hole of Google when they don't need to be, when you could actually help them out and kind of be that supporting dealer, because they will remember this. So like, I'm saying that, like, customers are kind of worried about or thinking like, should I call? They have questions. Should I be calling right now my auto finance company and requesting a deferral? Well, if I do that, is it going to affect my credit score? Well, is it going to cost me money? These are all questions that your customers have. And, you need to, I think, be the consultant right now, and I'm talking to the dealer, really put on that consultant hat and step up and answer these questions for your customers and kind of be that concierge and work with the lenders right now closer than you ever have before.
That's it. Yeah, for sure. And I think when we talk about non-prime, I think it's important to remember that a lot of us who are in this industry, and I'm talking at the dealer level, a lot of us that are in this industry, yeah, we try to sell a vehicle, we try to sell some product, and that's all great. At the end of the day, you're really a consultant to this customer, right? Your job is to bring them back to the bank, right? Like today they're in a 20% interest rate. Maybe tomorrow they'll be in an 11% interest rate, and your job, quite frankly, is to get them back to the 5% or the 0% interest, right? Like that, that should be our goal, right? I want to work with this customer and guide them back to the bank. So as a true consultant, now's the time to be picking up the phone. Hey, Mr. Customer, I know that I dealt with you 3 months ago. Just wanted to touch base, see how you're doing, right? And like you said, Andrew, that'll go a long way with the customer, and their loyalties will lay with you like forever, right? Yeah. So, what do they say? That, in times like this, people's true colors really come out. So, if you're able to really be there for your customer and offer them assistance, they're going to remember that for forever, right? So, we kind of look at that on the dealer level too, right? We try to do what we can to work with the dealers and really kind of bend where we can to make sure that they're in an okay position right now too. So, hopefully that's remembered on the other side as well, right? So, it's kind of, we're all in the same boat here. One last thing that I wanted to say too is that we have to stop thinking like 3 months ago. Like, the processes are different, the customers are different, the climate is different, everything is different. So if you have an experience with a lender, or if your customer has an experience with a lender that doesn't go as perfect as it would have 3 months ago, there's probably a reason. It's called COVID-19, why it's going that way, right? So let's take a step back and let's remember that we're all going through this together, and nobody has the right answers right now. Nobody in our life time has gone through something quite like what we're going through right now. So we need to be able to be understanding of that and work through this together.
Yeah, we're all kind of writing our COVID-19 playbook at the same time, right? No one was prepared for this. So, and I think that's important, that everyone knows. And I actually was saying that to some of the dealers, like, just be transparent with your consumers. You're, as a dealer, figuring out how to handle this. As a lender, you guys are figuring out how to handle this. We're all kind of, we're all in this together, and nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. And lenders don't want to see deep payments getting defaulted, of course. And So it's going to be, you know what, it's going to be interesting, Paul. And as always, man, I appreciate your time. I'd love to connect with you again in a couple of weeks because this is changing so much. And, we're all very curious to also see the aftermath here, like, kind of post-pandemic, what does it look like? I remember back in, 08, 09, we saw a lot of lenders, shut down. And it kind of, everybody was, post-recession, super conservative with lending. And, it's going to be really interesting. It's going to be interesting to see. And I think right now what we're all waiting on is to see how long is this going to go on for? And, how big of a hit is this going to have on the economy? Because I think if everyone's talking weeks, everyone's pretty optimistic that we can get through this, not super unscathed. Not super, obviously there's damage that's happening, but, if this thing goes on for a couple more weeks and we can start, getting the economy back humming along, it's not as bad. But if this goes on for months and months and months, it's, there's going to be a harsh reality for a lot of industries. And, it's going to be interesting to see where the industry goes. So I appreciate your time, like always, man. I think this has been super insightful. And I think that, dealers, there's a lot of good takeaways that we were able to, talk about here. And I appreciate it, man. So thank you so much. I hope you stay safe. I'm glad to hear that you haven't, you don't know anybody that's been affected by this yet. I personally don't know anyone either, but we'll see. Doug Ford was saying yesterday that, he's not optimistic, unfortunately, about what the next couple of weeks is going to bring. He thinks it's going to get a lot worse before it gets a lot better. And a lot of experts are saying that.
Yeah, it's real scary. And, as and many of your viewers may know or may not know this about me, like I'm the world's most eternally optimistic person you'll ever meet, right? So when you talk about a couple of weeks, I'm like, hey, I hope so, right? But at the end of the day, just kind of going with the instructions, right? Like, everybody says, you got to social distance, you got to stay home. So I'm trying my best to do it. One thing that I do, and I'll share this with everybody, and they may think I'm crazy for doing it, but I try to get a daily adventure in each day. So I'll get my coffee ready. I'll jump in my car and go for a spin. I'll just go and I'll find a road that I've not driven on before, and I'll just go and get some kind of different viewpoint other than my office and my laptop, right?
Yeah.
So, just to try and keep sane. So, yeah. So anyway,
my mindset's so important through this time for everybody. So, and I've had a couple other interviews on that, just talking about, best practices on what you can do to stay in touch with your team. How to keep morale up, how to keep culture going through all this. But yeah, we're all going through it. So no, this has been great. This has been great, man. I appreciate your time, Paul. Thank you so much. And we'll connect again soon, brother.
Yeah, sounds good. Talk to you later.
Thanks, dude.
The Dealer Deep Dive Podcast.